Hey folks, so in this video I'm going to be giving basically an overview of what the process will be this week as far as the project proposals, right, and finding out what exactly is out there for you. Okay, so kind of an overview here. First thing I want to do is basically give an overview of the timeline. So we already had this kind of in our first week's video. I kind of laid out the 4 months approximately we're going to be doing. I'm going to update that, right, kind of with respect to where we're at. Second thing I want to talk about is basically how to navigate what we'll call the project repository. So this is actually a tab. It's not available on Blackboard just yet. It'll actually show up in a couple days. What it is it'll basically have a list of all the different projects that we have available for you guys, and then any of the documents right that are associated with it. The fourth thing I want to talk about is going to be basically what should you think about or what should you consider when picking a project. Hopefully, right, you actually will spend some time, read through basically everything the sponsors have, and try to get a feel for what is maybe appropriate for your group based on what is its composition, right? What is its interest, and so on. The fourth thing we're going to talk about, and this will be really brief, is NDAs and IPRs, IPR agreements. For a lot of the projects we have, there is basically some commercial association, and so the sponsors will ask you to sign these documents. I'll just talk about that really briefly. And then from there, basically we'll take a look at what are the next steps for what is going to be coming up this week. Okay, so let's get started. First thing is basically look at the timeline. So this is actually coming from the video I had put out for the first week. So we're right now early September. So we're over here. We're actually kind of just before the yellow diamond, which is indicating the project proposals are being released. So the project proposals will be released in a couple of days. I'll make another announcement on Blackboard when those come out. And basically what will happen, right, is there'll be a new tab in Blackboard, and I'll actually show you what it'll look like, what to expect in a couple slides from now. But that tab will go out in a couple days, and basically all the proposals that we've received from the different sponsors will be available for you guys to review. So that'll be kind of your main thing for this week, is to take a look at those proposals that are available. What you should plan to do is basically take a look at those individually and try to see what is interesting, and then later on in the week schedule a meeting with your group basically to go and discuss the proposals and decide what exactly is of interest to you. Now, later on this week, and kind of going into the following week as well, we'll have basically the project bidding process. So a couple things will happen. First of all, later on this week, probably late this week, you guys will basically get information on how to submit a project bid. So a project bid is basically you saying, okay, we are the group to do this project, right? We are good, right? We are a good candidate because we have the skill set, right? Because we have the motivation. And so on, right? Whatever it is that basically is your justification for why you want a particular project, you're going to write that up. And we'll give you basically a template that you can look at, and basically outline all these different things that you can potentially do, or what you will need to basically answer. And that'll be what we call a project bid. And so we'll be getting basically that template to you guys this week. And then next week, you'll be asked basically to submit your project bids, right? And you'll bid on several projects. We're going to basically ask you to bid on 3 projects for sure, and optionally a 4th one. Typically, what I recommend is, well, what I recommend trying to think about is basically identifying, for our group, these are the top 3 projects. For sure, we want, these are the ones we want to make sure that we make an offer on, right? We want to try and go for these. And then also, kind of in addition to that, right, we say we have an optional 4th one. So I would actually treat the 4th one a little bit different than the first 3. Rather than saying, oh, hey, we're going to bid on the things that we, for sure want, make your 4th one maybe something that's maybe a little bit of an alternative, because sometimes what happens is, some projects look particularly interesting because maybe a bunch of people like web and mobile or something, and so then everybody bids on them. Well, at the end of the day, though, there's only one project, right? So we're only going to have to pick one team to run with that project. And so in order to basically prevent yourself from everybody clusters up on just a couple of projects, I would recommend that you basically try to diversify a little bit the projects you bid on. And so you can do that basically with your 4th slot or even your 3rd slot, right? It's basically try to do something just a little bit different, right? Just to make get a little bit of kind of diversity going in your bid, so it's not like you're going to be bidding for the exact same thing as a few other teams. So that's a general thought. So we'll be releasing that information to you guys. That's going to basically be looking at next weekend, right? Identifying what exactly you want to bid on, and then basically that next week as well, right? Is when we'll basically have the deadline that says, okay, we need to have all these bids from you guys, and we'll take those together. And basically, so you guys will be bidding. The ground class will also be bidding. So it's going to be kind of a large pool for us. I think we have 17 teams in online. I think ground has like 12 teams or 13 teams, and we're going to put all those together and we'll basically look at it and say, hey, out of the teams that are bidding for this particular project, who is going to be the most appropriate? Now, one question, I think I actually got this during the live discussion session this weekend, was, what happens if there's not a project? So I'll kind of rephrase that. So first of all, basically, in order to complete this class, you need a project, right? That's for sure. Otherwise, you can't get through 401. So that is something that we'll take care of. But you will have a project. So what will happen though is there's maybe a risk of, you submit all your project bids, right? Your group submits their bids, and then basically there was a better candidate, right, for each of those projects that you bid on. In which case, right, you have, it's like what project you're going to work on. If that happens, and I'm hoping it won't, I think we have kind of enough projects basically, there won't be an issue. But if that happens, basically what will happen is I will take a look at the team, right, that it wasn't quite a match with one of the projects, and I will go in there, look at their skill set, maybe even come talk to you guys again, and basically identify a project that is appropriate for you, right, out of the ones that are out there, right. So I will make sure that every team has a project, because you guys need that in order to complete this course. Okay. So that's kind of what we're doing kind of this week and next week, right? So this week is going to be, you get basically released to the proposals, you'll have some idea of what the project bidding process will be. Next week you'll submit your bids, and then we'll take a look at basically, letting you guys know who won, right? Who was the best or most appropriate team to take on each of those projects, and we'll let you guys know. So that's for next week. Moving forward, right, we'll have to basically be moving into the regular kind of rhythm of the course, right? So you guys will start basically with a design document you'll be submitting to us. Basically just to give us some sort of idea of where you're going, and then you'll start doing regular status reports. So right now it's kind of like, we're in setup stages of this whole thing, right, but we're going to basically be moving to this regular development rhythm once you guys actually get on your project. Okay, so this is where we're at so far. Let me see. Let's see. So the next thing I want to talk about is basically the project repository on Blackboard. So later on in the week, you'll be able to go on there, right, in a couple days, and you'll see this new tab's been added. It's called Proposals, right? It'll be at the way bottom of your Blackboard. You'll have a few different items in your Blackboard screenshots, and you'll see here. You'll have a few more things in your Blackboard shell, and you'll see here, just because this is a screenshot from the ground class. But over here, right, look for the proposals. So click that, and you'll see a new page, and there's a few things on here. The first thing is at the top, what you'll see is basically an Excel file. This Excel file, and I'll show you an example in a second, and I'll also give you an idea of some of the projects we'll have. This Excel file is going to basically contain an index of everything that's out there. So all the projects are going to be nicely indexed, right? It'll have the name, the sponsor, skill set, etc., right? So that's going to be your index. That's nice because you can basically play with it. So you can go and sort it, right? Filter it, whatever you want. So it's the index. And then beneath, though, basically are going to be these different folders that all have the information associated with each of the projects. So there's going to be a ton of folders. Each folder on it will have a unique ID that we're going to use to talk about projects. So when we ask, what project you're interested in, you tell us project 3 or 4 or 5, right? And that unique ID maps to the particular folder and the project is described by it. So project index, right? This is going to be kind of the way you first look at your projects. One thing I would note here is don't maybe read too much into the index. So don't automatically throw out a project because it doesn't look interesting in the index, right? I think you should still give basically all the projects a fair chance, right? So go and open the folder, see what they have to say, right? Maybe there's some more detailed description there that sounds more interesting, right? So don't just throw everything out. Okay. So this is an example of the spreadsheet you guys will be getting. So you can actually see here, and there's a little bit of a spoiler for the projects that are going to be out there. So not all of these will be available to you guys. This is kind of our work in progress. Right? We're not ready to release the full list yet, but just to give you a little bit of an example of what the spreadsheet looks like and an idea of what some of the projects will be, you can take a look at here. So we have here basically 12 projects that are kind of sample ones for us. So we have this. Let me jump to a highlight here. We have these 12 here. So you can see, for example, this first one, right, Mayo remote diagnostic application, Telederm, that's from ASU SIDSI, right? SIDSI is our school, School of Computing Informatics and Decision Systems Engineering. We have a really long name. That's basically the school that software engineering is under, right? Or a department, software engineering department. They have things like the contact name, right? So that one's under Dr. Ashraf Ghaffar, right? Sponsors over here, name was over here. Then we have these other columns here. Some of them, skip that. Some of them, like this one, basically are going to be optional. So this is YouTube URL. So for some of our sponsors actually put together a video which describes a little bit about the project. It basically says, okay, this is what we want, right? Or sometimes we'll have maybe a mock-up, right, or example usage. But basically some media that will help you better understand what exactly the project is about. Not all projects have this, but for those that do have it, please check it out. Next thing, right, is some sort of a description. that is going to be a little bit, well, I would probably recommend look at the main documents because the documents will be more comprehensive. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to summarize things here, although you can maybe use this to jog your memory, right? If you're trying to jump back and forth between the detailed proposals and the index, you can look at the description. Okay, next thing is basically area. So there are a couple of acronyms here. What this column is basically doing is it's showing what is the general area of this project. So like the first one there, right, is AI/medical, right? So artificial intelligence or medical stuff. If you're interested in that, maybe that's that's a domain, so maybe you should check it out. We have a few acronyms there. The other one is G&G, right? I know you guys know AI, right? You guys, I'm not going to explain that acronym. G&G is another one we have there, an acronym for games and graphics. Excuse me, graphics and gaming. If I look down here, that right is basically well, there's a lot of projects we have that maybe use something like a graphics engine like Unity to implement some sort of experience for a user. So those things will be indicated there. Other ones are just web and mobile, or some of them are kind of more general, and we don't have anything specifically labeled there. That area is really just going to be a very kind of general categorization. Some of the groups I know will have kind of a focus already, right? We did put people with kind of similar interests together. To me, though, that doesn't obligate you to pick a project in that particular area, right? So these don't think that our group is all focused on app development, so we have to pick an app one. No, if you want, you can pick a desktop one as well, right? There's no obligation there. This is just kind of our way of saying, this is the general category this particular project falls into. Okay, next thing here is special skills. So this is basically what the sponsor's already asking for. So some of them already have specific frameworks in mind, specific languages in line, specific technologies in line. This is stuff you may or may not already know. So one thing is people sometimes think of themselves, well, only the things that I know, right, those are the projects I want to work on. But also remember, right, that this is a learning experience. So maybe you want to learn a language like, let's see, maybe you want to get better at JavaScript, right? So why don't you pick the project that involves JavaScript, right? Or you want to get better at Unity, right? Maybe you've never used Unity. Maybe you take a look at the Unity project, right? All that means for you is that there's going to be basically a potential spin up, right, where you have to actually learn that software in advance, and probably you have to basically justify it to us in the bid and say, okay, hey, we're not experts in this right now, but we're confident with a few weeks of research, right, we can basically have the background that the sponsor will need, right? So you can use this as an opportunity, right, to pinpoint stuff that you potentially want to learn, right, as well as stuff that we already know this and that, so it will be a fast project for us to start on. Or maybe even you can mix it up, right? So you see a few things listed there for technologies, right, and skills. Pick something that there's a couple things you guys already know and you're really good at, and there's a couple things you'd like to know, right? So that'd be another approach. Last two columns here, right, are going to be for NDA and IPR stuff. So basically, a Boolean, yes or no, is this required? For some of you, right, if you work for a company, you may need to basically double check to see whether whether they need to know about any of this stuff. So on our end, right, our sponsors, right, some of them, right, are building kind of independent projects. They don't have specific, legal requirements, but then some of them, right, are maybe something that has a commercial implication, in which case they will ask you to sign something that's an NDA, right, or an IPR agreement, and so they do ask for these, right. So kind of make sure to be kind of always cognizant of those final two columns and what they kind of mean for you. Okay, so on the page, right, if you're going back into Blackboard, it'll look like this again, and then you have these individual folders. For each of the projects, right, the little ID number on there. The ID number, right, is also on the spreadsheet, right? It's the kind of the first column here, right? These are the unique identifiers I'm expecting you guys to use when you talk about them. Over here in the repository, right, basically you can open up these folders, and these folders will have additional information. So at minimum, they will have basically a project, kind of like an outline. It'll basically show, what is it about, who is it under, what is the expected skill set, what are the kind of the requirements for it. By default, every single project will have that. It'll basically be as a PDF. It'll be probably 2 or 3 pages. That's kind of your basic information. But in addition to that, a lot of the projects that we have something else associated with them. So there could be, some additional design documents, some videos, some additional media, maybe a longer description, all kinds of things. And then also, right, the NDA stuff, right, or IPR agreements, that will also be in the folder. So all the different files associated with each project are going to be in each of those folders. So if you're interested in a project, make sure you check out all the stuff that's in there. Okay, so that's kind of a basic layout of what we're talking about in terms of this proposals tab that's going to go live in a couple days. When you go through these, right, you're looking at projects, here's a couple things you want to think about, both individually and then as a group. So first thing, right, is the project interesting to your teams? So do keep in mind, right, that you're going to be working on this thing for a year. So don't go picking something that's like, well, it seems good enough, right? If you can, try to find a project that most people, like and are going to be, happy to work on for another year, right? This is kind of a long-term choice you're making, right? This isn't something that in a month from now, right, when B session starts, you can forget about. No, this is for all of 401 and all of 402. So do spend some time to think about, hey, is this interesting enough? Do we have the motivation to do this? Second thing there, right? Does your team have a good mix of skills to complete the project? So a lot of times, well, for groups, what we try to do is get groups that have kind of a diversity of skill sets. We didn't want to have everybody in the group is just an expert at mobile apps, right? We didn't do something like that. We tried to have a little bit of diversity, so you guys basically have a shot at trying to work on most of these projects, right? Instead of being kind of railroaded into doing just one thing. So hopefully that's something we've already kind of taken care of a little bit for you guys. Actually, so I'll jump back up. To the first bullet point for just a second to reiterate something I mentioned earlier. In general, your teams, you try to put together people that have kind of similar interests in what they'd like to build or what domain area they're interested in. But just because you have a specific area doesn't mean you're obligated to go for a project that maps one-to-one, right? Basically, what we want is to give you guys a starting point of this is what we're going to start discussing, right? We're all on the same page with this, right? And then we can kind of go from there. But there's no obligation there. All right. Number 3, will the project require your team to visit the sponsor's site/lab? So there are some projects that are meant basically for either ground or online. There's some that are that can be kind of adapted. So there's some sponsors that basically say, okay, yeah, we can do ground or online. If they're ground, they'll do the kind of this little variant, right? If they're online, they'll do this little variant. You want to kind of pay attention to that. Maybe for those projects, it would be nice if you had one member on your team that was in Arizona. Obviously, right, I know that most of you guys are not around, and this is kind of isn't, a choice, right? We will definitely have, enough projects that are, purely remote, right, to get everybody something. But, for those of you who maybe, are around Arizona, right, maybe there is something that you can kind of do, right, in addition, right, a little bit more flexibility. Okay. So, fourth point there, will the project require special hardware? This you kind of read a little bit about. So there are some projects that basically you'll need to own something, right? So maybe you need to own an Android device or an Apple device to do testing on. So that will be basically spelled out by the project proposal. On the flip side, right, maybe you also have a special hardware requirement, but the sponsors will actually say, hey, we're okay with sending you this, right? So they will actually mail you guys some hardware to write code against. If you guys do those projects, please take good care of the stuff they send you, okay? Or I'm going to have words with you, okay? If they're sending you hardware to work with, right? You guys better treat it well. Okay, last thing there, right, is the NDAs and IPR agreements. I'll talk about that very briefly in a second, but it's something to be aware of, right? Know what you're doing if you're asked to sign these documents and what are the implications of them. Okay. So if you submit a bid to a project that says yes to an NDA, then you need to expect you're going to sign an NDA, right? If it says yes in the column for IPR, then you should expect to sign an agreement for that. Please don't bid on a project, right, if you're not intending to sign those documents, right? And that's for everyone on the team. If there's an issue with that, right, go for a project that says basically nothing's required. Okay. So I have two kind of final things here to discuss, basically NDAs and then IPR agreements. I'm not going to go into depth on this because it's not really my place, okay? So these are things that are basically agreements between you and your sponsor, right? ASU does not have any involvement in this, right? I can't answer questions about this, right? Don't ask me, don't ask the TA, don't ask us anything about this. We're not a mediator in any sense for these documents, right? This is between you and the sponsor. So be aware of that. So what I have here is I basically want to read some definitions of what these things are, so that you guys can have a little bit of idea of what you'll end up seeing. So first thing here is NDAs. I'm going to read. This is a quote from Investopedia. This is kind of their definition of it. A non-disclosure agreement (NDA) is a legal contract between two or more parties that signifies a confidential relationship that exists between the parties involved. The confidential relationship often refers to information that's to be shared between the parties, but should not be made available to the general public. Okay, so this is some sort of an agreement, right, that is made between you and the sponsor, right, based on the information perhaps that's in your project. When you go through these, here are maybe some things to keep your eye on, right, or maybe think about. just kind of general suggestions, right? This isn't, like I said, we don't get involved with stuff, but just as, things that maybe show up in common NDAs, you should be thinking about, who does the agreement apply to, right? So, who does it apply to? I'll just read these. What information will be confidential? Length of time confidentiality is required. Exclusions, right? Things that may be shared and are not covered by confidentiality. Right? Maybe that last one impacts us a little bit, because if you guys need to make end of semester presentations, you should be able to say something about your work. If you have questions about the NDA, you need to talk with your sponsor. Again, it's not something that I or the TA will be involved with. Okay. Next thing, and I'm a little bit gloom and doom there, but this is kind of serious legal stuff. Okay, so IPR agreements, right? So intellectual property rights. This is another quote I'm going to read. This is now from uslegal.com. Okay. A contract executed between or among collaborating institutes for the purchase and sale of intellectual property rights. It sets forth the rights and responsibilities of each institute concerning intellectual property that may be created during the term of the collaboration. It also discusses on rights associated with intellectual property that is created jointly by the collaborating researchers, as well as intellectual property created independently by each. Okay, so that's a general idea of what an IPR agreement is about, right? So obviously, right, you guys are creating something, so that is some sort of intellectual property that is there. So some sponsors will be interested in you signing an agreement about this stuff. Again, if you have questions, please speak with them directly. Okay, so those are two things you guys may see, right? Look out for them. So to wrap up this video, what are the next steps? So in a couple days, right, project proposals are going to go out. Once they're out, start taking a look at them individually, plan to meet as a group, and then discuss what you're interested in bidding on. Expect, right, to be doing 3 bids with a 4th optional one. I recommend kind of having a diversity, right? Projects that, you got to make sure you get some bids in there, right? 2 or 3 bids in the projects you really, really want to or you think really, really look cool, right? And on the off chance that everybody else thinks they also look cool, try and make your 4th your 4th bid based on something that's a little bit, broadening your scope a little bit, and something, right, that they can kind of, offers you an alternative if everybody clusters up on the same projects. And then the week after, right, next week, that's when we'll look at actually having you guys submit to us, right, your bids, and then we'll take a look at those and figure out who is the best suited for each of the projects. All right, so see you guys later.